Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining me. As you can see, we are going to talk about conflict resolution today. If you have ever read a self-help book, parenting book, had conversations about it, training, you already have a lot of good ideas of how to help kids work through their conflicts. My goal is to bring some different ideas than what's already out there, or maybe present it in a way that you haven't heard. Or maybe you have. Something along the way maybe will stick out to you and it will help you level up your conflict resolution skills. So I am hoping that by the end, you will see conflict resolution as growth opportunities. So let's go over how this is going to happen. First, I want you to take a second and think about what time frame takes the most work. Before you ever get to the conflict, during the conflict, or after the conflict. I personally believe that the majority of the work takes place before you ever get in the situation of having to resolve the conflict. And that is most of the presentation. I have divided up the presentation into 3 parts, before, during, and after. Each section has its own color background, so that when you come back and are looking for something specific, then you'll know which section by the color of the background. So here is, let's see, previews for each section. Here are previews for each section. All right, so before section, we will go over the thoughts and ideas that will help you show up the way that you want to show up. Remember, this is the longest section. This is where we're spending the most time. So don't worry and try not to get too antsy, because we will get to the during part. For the during, we'll go over how to implement those beliefs that we just talked about. Here's some application, and then don't worry, we will have some examples. And then we will go over what to do after and how to grow from here. So think about when you are grumpy, tired, hungry, or drowning in your own life and you just don't have it in you to deal with anyone else's emotions. Has anyone else had those moments when the kids are fighting and you tell them to go away, or you snap your fingers and tell them to knock it off? You don't even care if they keep fighting as long as you don't have to listen to it. Probably later, you wish you would have handled it a little bit better. But it's life. I've been there. I'm guessing you've been there. We've all done it. So then think about the flip side. Think about a time when you've been able to show up calm and you were able to stop what you were doing, be with the kids, and help them solve the problem in a way that you were proud of your contribution and that the kids are empowered in the end. It can be so hard to show up the way that we really want to sometimes. In an ideal world, we would have the time and energy to teach the kids to work through their issues in a healthy, responsible way every time something came up. Conflict, big emotions, whatever it was. But while we are very blessed in this world, our world is very far from ideal. So our goal here is to level up your skills when you are living in real life. Please note and please remember, this is not about judging yourself. It is about being aware of your own emotional state and how it affects the way you show up in situations. Some of the ideas that I present may be new. Some may be so different they shock you. And some might prick your pride, and you might need to sit in the shock so that your brain can rewire. It might take a few days. You might have to come back and watch it again. That's fine. I can do this again. Just click play. You could also remember to, if there's something on here that you want to work more on, just find some more resources, dig deep, find what I'm talking about, and then go and find YouTube videos, podcasts. I have a list at the end of a few resources and references that I use in this presentation. So as we're going along, remember that the best way to learn something new, this is to pick up what feels right to you, leave what doesn't, and remember that life is a road of learning. So you can come back and pick up more once you've mastered one or two. Not mastered. We don't master stuff as humans, do we? Maybe. But it's a skill. We're all working on it. So don't worry about setting a high expectation for yourself. Just keep improving, leveling up. That's our goal. So what exactly would a successful conflict resolution look like? Take a second to think about it. Maybe your idea of success will transform as we go. So before anything else happens, it all starts in your own headspace. These are the topics we're going to cover before we get into any conflict situation. Remember, this is the longest section. So bear with me. No, we'll get to the during because I know that's where we're all antsy to be. What is your end goal? Take a good look at your own humanness, conviction that differing perspectives are valid, being okay with others experiencing emotions, nothing is wrong with the situation, your inner peace sets the tone, and you are a guide, not a judge. Those are our topics. Let's get started. So what is your end goal? Sometimes different situations have different end goals. Sometimes we just need the kids to be quiet. Sometimes we just want them to stop fighting. Sometimes we just need them to do what we want them to do. And sometimes we want them to know that we have all the answers so that they'll listen to us. But what if we could do so much more than that? We have a chance to teach a better way to connect. We have a chance to help kids grow into kind, empathetic, assertive adults who have healthy boundaries and good mental health. Every time we interact with a child or another adult, we influence them. Every interaction that we have shapes who we are and how we view the world. Imagine empowering someone through a conflict. Imagine influencing a child to have confidence in trusting their gut. Imagine helping them to recognize healthy boundaries to help keep themselves safe and helping to empower them to speak up when someone has crossed their boundary. By the way, a boundary is often misused in our society. A boundary creates safety for yourself, teaches other people how to treat you, and establishes what you are going to do about it. The important part is communicating these thoughts and feelings, then doing what is in your power to make sure that you are physically and emotionally safe. Number 2, take a good look at your own humanness. Nobody's perfect. We make mistakes. We say wrong things. We do wrong things. We fall. We get up. We learn. We grow. We move on. And we live. Don't get down on yourself about being human, but be realistic that you are one. Sometimes when dealing with people, we forget that we are dealing with humans. When we occasionally take a few minutes to think about times when we've learned something and when that learning looked a whole lot like messing up, we find it easier to see the mistakes or tantrums that other people are experiencing as the messy end of learning. When we remember that people have a tendency to be human, we can make that an opportunity for connection rather than judgment. So I had a situation with a friend, and he was saying how annoying this 20-year-old was. And when he voiced his concern about how annoying she was being and behaving, I looked at him and said, "So you were never annoying when you were 20? He didn't really have a response from that because he thought about what he was like when he was 20. So sometimes we expect others to live by our measure of success or behavior, even when we can't or don't live by that standard ourselves. Think about when you have been hangry, when you've needed a nap, when you're mad, when you are having major indecision, when you've been hurt, when you have big emotions, or when you just need a hug. Maybe that's just me. But if you can't think of any recent experiences when you were human, think back to when you were a kid or a teenager. This is what I am talking about when I say look at yourself as a human so you can connect with others. When you see a kid acting like a human that hasn't learned a particular skill yet, instead of asking, "What were you thinking? Why are you like this? What did you do?" Go back to that time in your life where you learned something the hard way or the messy way. Life can be shocking, and sometimes we need a minute to process. So here are my phrases that I like to have on hand. When you don't know what to say, having these in your back pocket can take the bite out of the shock as you process whatever just happened. Well, that happened. Live and learn. Good luck with that. Sometimes that comes out a little sarcastic with my kids. I'll have to own up on that one. Or sometimes we laugh and then I say good luck with that. But if you can say it sincerely, that's good too. Also, do you have any ideas where to start? Conviction that differing perspectives are valid. This one can be tricky. Our minds know it, we understand it, but it's one of those things that can be hard to apply and actually understand. So our goal here is to see other perspectives, not to put yourself in the situation and tell them what you would do or how you would feel. It's not about you. This is about accepting what is and reality, not about what you think it is supposed to be. I like to use the reference that we all see life through our own kaleidoscope. Each piece of the kaleidoscope that moves is a piece of our life. A good experience, a bad experience, a thought, a book, a movie, someone's actions, someone's reaction, your actions, your experiences, everything that we are exposed to becomes a part of our kaleidoscope, and it shapes the way that we view the world. However other people see the situation, remember that it isn't wrong. It's just how they are looking through their kaleidoscope. We want to take a glimpse through their kaleidoscope to understand where they're coming from, to help the other child understand where each other are coming from, and to see how we can get everyone's needs met without minimizing or dismissing their emotions or perspectives. So remember, our goal is to take a peek through their kaleidoscope, not to force ours on them. Life is a road of learning. Learning about yourself and learning about others. Interacting with others and even conflict is part of that learning. So this is where conflict resolution becomes an opportunity for growth. So through conflict resolution, we can learn about others. We can learn empathy, understanding different perspectives. We can learn respect, listening with the intent to understand, and disagreeing without being mean. For ourselves, we can learn how to express ourselves, how to compromise, saying what we mean, getting our needs and wants met, and understanding what we are comfortable with and how to communicate effectively. By the way, Simon Sinek says communication is not about saying what we think. Communication is about ensuring others hear what we mean. This can be so hard. I've actually needed to be paying attention to this more often lately because I have been saying things that come across as an observation instead of a request or an authoritative decision. I'll say something to my kids like, "Oh, hey, you guys have been on a lot of electronics lately." And they'll be like, "Okay." And then they'll go downstairs and watch TV. And then when I'm like sitting there baffled, my husband says, "You didn't tell them they couldn't watch more TV." So, observation. I did not communicate very well. Sometimes with kids, you can say something like, "Oh, this table is really messy." But what we really need to say is something to the effect of, "Whose responsibility is it to clean up this table?" Or, "Who can help me clear up this mess?" I'm sure we could go on and on about communicating. So just remember, if you're not getting the response you want, try using different words and wonder if you are being specific about what you want and need, or helping the kids be specific about what they want and need. Number 4, being okay with others experiencing emotions. How many times have you heard that the goal of life is to be happy? Or our amazing parents drop us off at school and they say, "Bye, have a great day." Totally done that. And with all the sincerity of our hearts, we tell our loved ones, "I just want you to be happy." So my favorite podcast is called Better Than Happy by life coach Jody Moore. Her idea that living an extraordinary life is not easy or comfortable. It is so much better than that. Her theme is that experiencing all the emotions in a healthy way will help you to be better than happy. And this starts with truly accepting and understanding that experiencing All emotion is part of the human experience. This quote stuck out to me years ago and pops into my head every once in a while from Third Rock from the Sun, the show. You have to have feelings. Feelings are like the core of the human experience. That was so profound when I heard it, because so many times I avoid feelings, or I squish them, or don't want to feel the hard ones, right? Jody Moore tells us, emotions are not demands to be met or problems to be solved. They are just information. But they are powerful, and those emotions are there to direct you. That was kind of an aha moment for me. Remembering that they're not demands to be met or problems to be solved. I love that part. So Jody Moore talks about how feelings are just vibrations in our body, and they can't actually hurt us. It's our thoughts and actions that follow up after the vibrations that determine the next step and what's going to happen next. It is okay to experience the full range of emotions along the way. When we stop fearing emotion in ourselves and others, it allows us to focus on the real problem, which is usually a lack of understanding or a lack of a skill. When a kiddo just needs a minute, it is okay to let them just sit in their emotions. Some kids want to be held, some kids want space. If they want space, if you can, try to kind of be near them. Don't let your bubble touch theirs, and you don't have to talk with them. Sometimes if they're having really big emotions and I just want them to know that I am there, but they can't handle any attention from me, I'll start reading my book on my phone. I'm there, but I'm not overwhelming them with my energy. So just being near them will help them to know that they aren't alone, that nothing is wrong, and that you are strong enough to handle their emotions. When you can't handle their emotions, you get stressed. And when you get stressed, they pick up on that and they think that something is wrong. And typically that makes it worse. Have you ever heard someone say, "Don't be sad, just be happy"? If you don't let them sit in their emotions, you're going to compound their emotions. So they may feel their original disappointment. That's not going away just because you told them not to feel it. They may feel embarrassed, resentful, not good enough, not accepted. They may feel like a victim. They may feel like something is wrong with them. Think about hearing firsthand stories of concentration camps. We find it completely understandable when people feel hopeless and depressed in those situations. We don't try to talk them out of their feelings because it makes sense to us. It wouldn't make sense to us if they had no emotion about that situation. We find it inspiring when in those depressing circumstances, people can find a reason to smile. So think about this wide array of emotions that come out of similar situations. All right, so if you can't handle their emotions, and if you have this mentality that they just need to be happy, then you may end up feeling resentful, frustrated, impatient, embarrassed, or like something is wrong. When we place limitations on which emotions are acceptable to feel and when, we are limiting the human experience. We don't want to deprive ourselves or others of the full human experience, right? Can you think of a time in your own life when you were upset and someone said, "That's hard. No wonder you're sad. Do you want a hug?" They didn't try to talk you out of it. They just accepted it. If we understand that emotions don't need to be fixed, we can connect through emotions. You can say something like, "I haven't been in this exact situation before, but I have felt blank, and it is really hard. I'm sorry you're going through this." So, I love this quote. Beneath every behavior, there is a feeling, and beneath each feeling is a need. And when we meet that need, rather than focus on the behavior, we begin to deal with the cause, not the symptom. We'll still address the behavior, but having the core belief that emotions and behaviors are indicators will help you to show up in a more productive way. This is one of the shocking parts that I warned you about in the beginning. Nothing is wrong with the situation. They are doing exactly what they are supposed to be doing. This is another thing that Jody Moore taught me. It is tough to change this mindset, but let's see if we can work on it a bit. So Ross Greene said, "Children do well when they can." Jody Moore says, "Everyone is doing the very best they can." I truly believe this. Sometimes people's best is not very good. Sometimes it is downright awful, but it's still the best they were capable of in that moment, which means it was just right. I choose to believe this not for other people, but for me. Believing this allows me to feel compassionate and empathetic instead of frustrated and annoyed. I like to shorten that sometimes and tell people when they're down on themselves that their best is different every day. Your best today is different than your best yesterday, and your best today and yesterday are different than your best tomorrow. It doesn't always look like you're going up and your best is going up. It's more ups and downs, right? And it's going to look different every day, sometimes every hour, and sometimes every minute. But we're all doing the best that we are capable of. Isn't it interesting that sometimes when a 3-year-old behaves like a 3-year-old, we wonder what in the world is wrong? When peanut butter gets smeared on the wall, or when they throw a tantrum in the store, or they throw something, when they break something, we wonder what is wrong, what is happening? What about when a teenager pushes the limits of rules or gravity? So now is a great time to think about how you are measuring others. Measure a 3-year-old by a 3-year-old expectation. She's supposed to throw tantrums and have opinions. She's supposed to have a hard time sitting still. She's supposed to hit. 10-year-olds are supposed to be figuring out how to listen to other people's opinions. They're supposed to be a little impatient. They're supposed to be a little messy and clumsy and crazy. Now think about when you were a teenager. How annoying were you? How much did you talk back to your parents? Think about the things that you did that your parents still don't know about. Now, does this mean that all behaviors are desirable? No. Just like a toddler is supposed to fall when she is walking, getting back up strengthens her muscles, and she learns how to control her body. So as we mess up or learn, this is how we develop these skills to be better. Also, I believe that we all still throw tantrums. They just don't always look like how a 3-year-old does it. I like to point out tantrums that we see on TV. I say something like, oh, that's a cute baby tantrum. Or, oh, that's a mom tantrum. That's a teenager tantrum right there. And sometimes, oh, that was a Hulk tantrum. So, pointing out and normalizing and understanding that we all are still having these tantrums kind of gives us a little bit more compassion. And sometimes I have to apologize for my size tantrums. Life is a road of learning, and sometimes it is wonky and messy. It is supposed to be. There is nothing wrong with that. If we see conflict as a necessary part of life, it takes away the stress of it isn't supposed to be this way. When we use that phrase, supposed to be, or another common one is should, we set expectations. We are fighting reality or judging what is. And those thoughts create expectations, and unmet expectations can cause resentment and stress. So you can try to catch yourself if you want to work on this. When you say should, first just notice, how often do you say should? And then if you want to try leveling up, you can replace should with could. When we replace should with could, it takes away the expectations and gives us options. She should do that project, or she could do that project. It looks like she wants to watch instead. For myself, instead of thinking I should do the dishes and then feeling guilty but still reading, I try to think I could do the dishes, or I could read a little longer. Sometimes I do the dishes. Most of the time, I read and then do the dishes. When we use the word could, it helps us realize that we have choices, and that, my friend, is empowering. This is a situation I had with my 13-year-old son. I told him to put some sunblock on so he didn't get burned and get cancer later in life. And he said, I have a hat. And I said, what about the back of your neck? And his response was, you worry too much. But don't worry, that's exactly what you're supposed to do. And of course, I had to sigh and smile and tell him, and it's your job to question my suggestions, because that's what teenagers do, right? So sometimes when we're in shock, really frustrated, or overwhelmed, it comes out through our responses. And we can say some things in not the nicest ways. Why would you do that? What is wrong with you? Just let me do it if you aren't going to do it right. Shut up. What were you thinking? But what if instead our response was, you are doing exactly what you are supposed to be doing. This is how you learn. All right, number 6, your inner peace sets the tone. Remember that how you show up will have an effect on those you are helping. When little people are overwhelmed by big emotions, it's our job to share our calm, not to join in their chaos. When conflict arises, you have a lot of possible thoughts and attitudes. Decide now what you want your attitude to be. Maybe figure out your happy place so that when the yelling and the hitting starts, you can take a deep breath, think of your happy place, and bring the calm to the chaos. Number 7, you are a guide, not a judge. You, the adult, are the mediator, the guide, the mentor, or simply one who teaches. You can teach them a better way to respond, connect, and control themselves. If you want to be a successful guide, you can't be a judge handing out a sentence. If you want to be a successful mentor, you can't be a spectator yelling from the other side of the room. You can't even be halfway paying attention. If you want to be effective, you need to be present, both physically and mentally. You don't have to have the answers. Mostly you have to have good questions. And we'll go over that in a little bit. All right. Now the hard part is done. If you show up with these belief systems in place, the likelihood of success is much higher. Speaking of success, has your idea of a successful conflict resolution shifted as we've gone through these thoughts? Let's see if it continues to modify. But before we go on, I want to share one of my favorite quotes with you. Do your best until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. Remember to apply this to yourself as you learn these new skills and thoughts. Also, never let a problem to be solved become more important than a person to be loved. All right, here is what we're going to go over for the during portion. Bring the calm to the chaos. Body language. Summarize, then empathize. Good questions. Focus on one issue at a time. Small physical contact points. Differentiate between emotions and actions. Don't invalidate their reality. Empower them to stand up for themselves. Apologies. Look for the life lessons. Bring the calm to the chaos. Go to your calm place and make sure that you have the mental fortitude to look for and take responsibility if you had any contribution to the conflict. Because if we get defensive, if we have any part in the conflict, then that draws you into the chaos instead of bringing calm to the chaos. So having that mental fortitude to take responsibility is a big deal. All right, be aware of bias, or beware of bias. Sometimes we get more upset with our own kids for misbehaving, or sometimes we go into mama bear mode if another kid hurts our child. Sometimes we assume that the kid who always causes trouble started this issue. And sometimes we think that our way is the best way. Take responsibility if you contributed. Did you accidentally tell two kids that they could be first? Did you say something and then forget? Did you say something that was misunderstood? Did you appear to be listening but didn't even hear? Did you jump in with a solution before hearing all the sides of the situation? Or have you been allowing a behavior that you didn't like because it was easier than solving the issue? And then apologize for your part. Body language can tell us so much about how a person is feeling. With kids, their body often shows more than what their mind is able to process or verbalize. Watch for body language as a sign of conflict. Once I had two boys playing. I looked over and one was holding the other, and while the second boy didn't say anything, his face looked mad and a little panicked, and he was pulling away from the first boy. While this may not come across as conflict at first glance, because no words were said, the body language showed that it was. It's easy to notice the loud body language. As the guide, it is up to us to watch the quiet body language too. So the screaming, yelling, hitting, those are the easy ones. Sometimes even being irritable or angry or offended is easy to notice. But what about the ones who are wanting to escape? What about the ones who are procrastinating or moving away, or those who are having the urge to hide or isolate? So keep an eye out for those situations. Point out body language to the child that didn't understand what it meant. You can say things like, "See how she lifted her shoulder and turned away? That shows that she was protecting herself. Maybe she was scared or worried about getting hurt, either physically or from your words." Or, "Did you notice how he stepped back and put his hands up? He is creating a barrier, protecting himself and showing you that he wants you to stop." Sometimes you can explain that when we feel like we aren't being heard, we do things to get someone's attention. So you can point out that maybe this other kid spoke softly first, but then was ignored. Then he spoke louder, and then he yelled, and then he grabbed your toy. And then you grabbed it back and he bit you. The root of the problem was that you weren't listening when he tried to communicate, and he didn't have a better way to get you to listen. Again, we'll discuss behavior later, but we're focusing on motivation and body language right now. All right, watch body language during conflict resolution to see if they have more to add. Is a kid chewing their cheek, biting their lips, shifting in their seat? They may have more to say. So after recapping the problem, you can ask if anyone else has more to add. And if you see them sitting or chewing on their cheeks or their lips, you might have to ask them specifically by name and say, "It looks like you might have something else to add." Be aware of your own body language. Is eye contact too much for this particular child? Do you need to stand to the side instead of face to face? Are you on their level? Do you need to bend down or sit on the floor? Do you need to go sit near them across the room? Is there a seat? Or for those of us who are short, do you need to find something to stand on? Another thing that you could do is to keep your hands open and up instead of closed or pointing. And most of all, remember to put on your calm face. Summarize, then give a chance to empathize. People don't want to be talked out of their feelings. People want to be heard, seen, felt, and understood. Do you remember this from step 4? Being okay with others experiencing emotions. So during conflict resolution, this can look like summarizing. So summarize if you can, repeat if you have to, or even repeat the last few words that they said. Or you can look for the deeper meaning of what they didn't say, but if you can see what the actual problem is. Sometimes they may not have the words to name their emotion. Try not to assume that you know how they're feeling, but ask questions. Help each of them see that the other person is doing the best that they can. If their emotions are too big, you may have to wait. Let them sit in their emotions, but make sure that you come back and talk with everyone involved. Ask good questions. This is a big key for success. You can ask, what happened? And my favorite that always reveals key information, what happened before that? How did that make you feel? What do you think we should do? Who can you control? Any more ideas about what to do next? Is everyone okay with this? What else could we do so that everyone is okay with this plan? Do any apologies need to be made? It's okay to ask them that and bring that up. How can you make restitution or fix things the best that you can? How can we solve this as a team? Good questions empower them to solve their own problems. The best part of having good questions is that you don't have to have the answers. If they don't have the answers, you could suggest one or two ideas. They don't even have to be good ideas. You're just getting the ball rolling. Focus on one issue at a time. You can say things like, we'll talk about that in a minute. We're not talking about her right now, we're talking about you. We'll ask him next, but first, I need you to answer my question. Let's focus on one thing at a time. So you can use any one of those phrases. Small physical contact points. Some kids don't like being touched when they're upset. Others crave it. Watch their body language. You can start with a soft touch to the elbow. You can ask permission. You can ask them, do you want a hug? May I sit next to you? Remember that touch is a way that humans connect. So if they're okay with it, it's important to make that connection, obviously in an appropriate way. Above all, watch their body language and respect their space. Differentiate between emotions and actions. All emotions are acceptable. Not all behavior is. So some examples are, it's okay to be angry. It isn't okay to hit. It's okay to be happy. It isn't okay to squish your friend to death. I'm glad you're excited. Make sure your arms don't hurt your friends when you wave. Your feelings were hurt, but that doesn't mean you get to smash his project. Don't invalidate their reality. We have a tendency to tell other people, especially kids, that what they think isn't actually true. That they shouldn't feel how they're feeling, or that they didn't see what they saw, or that they understood something incorrectly. We do this either because we're uncomfortable with their emotions, or possibly because of our need to be right. Either way, it causes them to doubt themselves. Causing them to doubt their gut instinct or perception is what manipulators do. Don't manipulate. Show them respect by accepting where they are and how they see things. Teaching them to trust themselves while being open to other options is a life skill that we all need. Empower them to stand up for themselves. You can tell them that they can say, "Stop, I don't like that. I'm playing with this now. You can have it next. That hurts. I want to keep this one, but you can have that one." You can say to them, "It's okay to ask an adult, can you help me solve this problem?" This phrase actually came up when a kiddo was having troubles with other kids, and this child had been told repeatedly not to tattle. And so we came up with this phrase that's not tattling, but it's also empowering to get help with the problem. So, can you help me solve this problem? Whether it's with friends or kids or a project they're working on. All right, you can also say, tell him what you are okay with. And that gives them practice working on boundaries. And look at Jake's eyes and tell him you don't like it when, instead of having them clam up and look down, eye contact is empowering for the person who feels like something wrong has happened. All right, this is the best apology method that I have found. So number 1, I'm sorry, and then you have them say what they specifically did, and that helps them to take ownership. Number 2, next time I will, and then they come up with a plan of how to change their behavior. Number 3, I will make it right by. This helps them to understand that restitution is a part of making up for their behavior. Number 4, will you please forgive me? And you can have the kid ask this even if the other kid isn't quite ready, and that shows a willingness to work through this. And then you can have them apology. This is the great apology acceptance. Sometimes it bothers my heart a little bit when someone says, "I'm sorry I hit you," and then the other person says, "It's okay. It's not okay." And we all know that it's not okay, but we don't have the words to accept their apology while making them feel better. Anyways, so I like this simple statement of, "Thank you for your apology." And then you can have them seal the deal. You can have them hug or high five, fist bump, wave, and make sure that you can have this conversation with them, what they are comfortable with. All right, next, look for the life lessons. You can tell them, listen to your instincts. You can compromise if you choose. If you don't want to be friends, be kind. If you can't be kind, be polite. It is okay to work on your own. You decide when and how someone gets to touch you. You have the right to change your mind. Live and learn. Stop when someone says stop. People are more important than things. Use your words when something is happening that you don't like. Trust takes a long time to build, but is easily broken. If you don't know the answer, ask a friend. Your brain is a great problem solver. It is okay to ask for help. All right, here's a quick review before we get to the examples. Body language. Summarize, then empathize. Ask good questions. Focus on one issue at a time. Small physical contact points. Differentiate between emotions and actions. Don't invalidate their reality. Empower them to stand up for themselves. Apologies, and look for the life lessons. Example 1. These were the two boys from the body language example when he didn't say anything, but I could see that look on his face. And I don't think that the kids actually said anything or did any talking in this. They just nodded their heads. So I said, Eddie, do you want him to stop? And he nodded. Bob, stop. He doesn't like that. Eddie, when someone is doing something you don't like, you need to use your words and tell them to stop. And then to Bob, Bob, did you see how Eddie was pulling away and not laughing? When someone is pulling away, that's one way that they are telling you they don't like what's going on. Even though he didn't use his words, you can still pay attention to what he's doing. So that gives, this example will show, so these are just my parts. Giving the child power, empowering him. Giving direct information, empowering him to stand up for himself, pointing out body language, and life lesson. Example 2. Sam said, she hit me. I said, she hit you and that hurt. What happened before that? So we are summarizing, then empathizing, and asking good questions. Sarah said, he took my house. I said, you have been working on that for 20 minutes, and then Sam came and took it. Can you tell Sam how that made you feel? So there again, we are summarizing and empathizing and empowering for Sarah to speak up for herself. Sarah, mad. Sam, Sarah was mad because she worked so hard and then it was destroyed. Do you remember when your Lego castle was broken last week? Can you tell why Sarah was sad and frustrated? Summarize, give the opportunity to empathize, and also we expanded the emotion vocabulary here a little bit. Then Sam said, but she hit me. That's not okay either. We'll talk about that next. Do you see that she didn't like it when you took her project? Do you know now why she's upset? So we're focusing on one issue at a time and pointing out body language. And then Sam said, I guess so. Sarah, when he took your project, did you say anything? Life lesson and speaking up for yourself. Sarah said, yes, I told him to give it back. Good job using your words first when you were frustrated. Sam, did you hear her tell you to give it back? Life lesson of speak up for yourself, listening to others, and giving the benefit of the doubt. Sam said, yes, but she still hit me. Then I said, yeah, it hurts when we get hit. Are you okay? You ignored her words, so she found a way to get your attention. Do you have an idea of what would have gotten your attention? Think about it for a minute. So we're summarize and empathize, focus on one issue at a time, and life lesson of pay attention to others and self-reflection. And then while Sam was thinking about that to Sarah, I said, it is really frustrating when people ignore us. Remember that hitting hurts other people and you have such a kind heart. I know you don't want to hurt him. What are some ways for next time that you can be heard and be kind? So here we assume that they are doing the best they can. Life lesson of kindness and differentiate between emotions and actions. And then to both of them, what is more important, people or things? How do you want others to feel around you? Safe or scared? It's okay to be angry. It's not okay to hurt others. Do you know that what you do and say can help other people feel safe? All right, so what can we do right now to help each other feel safe? And then let's make sure we apologize to each other too. So life lessons, good questions, and apology. All right, example 3. There were 3 kids were working on a project together and they were fighting about how it needed to be done. So in this situation, you can either be involved and stay through the whole thing, or you can get the ball rolling and hand it off to them. So you can specifically ask each kid how they want to get it done, or you can ask them to tell each other how to do it and see if they had any ideas of how to solve the problem. Or you can ask them, is this something you guys want to work together to find a way to incorporate everyone's ideas? Do you want to vote on one idea and do that? Or do you want to each do your own thing? You can give them that guide and let them decide, unless obviously the requirement is a group project, but just tailor it to those needs. Oh, so that was no answers. I didn't have any answers. I just had questions. All right, example 4. This is one of my favorite stories to tell. So remember that while all of this is going on, I am still vigilantly watching all the body language. So there was a group of 5 girls coming down the hallway, and I said, wow, I can see some really big emotions going on here. And then all the girls started talking at once. And I said, what's the problem? And then they were all talking at once. And I said, so what are we going to do now? And then they were all talking at once. And I said, okay, so what's our decision? And then they all started talking at once. And I said, is everyone okay with this? And then they smiled and walked away. And I wondered what that was all about. Again, I was watching body language. And if I had needed to, I would have specifically asked either each girl what was going on or had them take turns telling each other what the problem was. But in this situation, all I had to do was have good questions, and they solved their own problem. All right, example 5. So this is after there were 2 kids fighting, and I was talking with Joshua. I said, Joshua, why were you screaming? And he said, Max was taking his ball and throwing it at mine and literally hurting me. And then I said, I heard you tell Max to stop. Then I heard you scream at him to stop. What can you do next? So I'm empowering him to stand up for himself, and I'm having him to use his words. And then Joshua said, I don't know. And I said, can you control him? He said, no. Who can you control? And Joshua said, me. And I said, when you're telling someone to stop and they don't, it is up to you to walk away. So, life lessons. And then with Max, who was just fighting with Joshua, this was not the first time that we had talked about this, and he knew. So I said, dude, what lecture am I going to give you? And he said, stop when someone says stop. I said, yep, thanks. So he lectured himself. I didn't even have to tell him anything. Remember that sometimes they already know that what they did wrong, and they can lecture themselves. Being saved makes you grateful for being safe in that moment. Saving yourself makes you feel brave going forward. When we rescue kids, we take away their sense that they are in control, and we deprive them of the opportunity to learn that they can handle things when they get hard. We also make it easier for kids to avoid dealing with stressful situations, enforcing avoidance habits. On to after the conflict. Ownership of their learning, disperse or distract, reflect and plan for you. So if it feels like they're still paying attention, you can pick one or two from each of these groups or just one. Just know and remember that this section is a bonus. They've already done some learning and growing. So if this works out, great. If not, that's okay too. So if they are done, just let them be done. So you can ask specific things like, if you could go back and change something you said or did, what would you change? What will you do for next time? Or if you're in a similar situation, what could you say next? All right, and then tell them to go play, if you can, to disperse the tension. Or tell a joke or change the subject. Just don't sit and stew in it any longer. And then the same goes for you. Reflect and plan. What did you learn? What would you like to do differently next time? Life is a road of learning. Remember this. Remember, it's okay if it's wonky and messy. It's supposed to be. As you apply new skills, it will be, and that's okay. So, here's my question again. What does successful conflict resolution look like? Has your idea shifted? Maybe you want to pause and write down what you think that successful conflict resolution looks like. If you want, go ahead, pause it. I'll be here. All right, here's what I came up with. Empowering them to solve their own problems, respecting themselves and others, and getting their needs met while building connections. Remember and notice that I didn't say everyone walks away happy, because that doesn't always happen. And their emotions are not your responsibility, and you don't have to solve their emotions. All right, here's a quick overview before, during, and after. Here are the resources and references that I promised. I used a lot, and I've learned a lot from Jody Moore and Brene Brown. And this book, What Do You Say? #2 has been fantastic. There's too many things in my life that I've just picked up as I've gone. I wish I could reference and give you the resource for all of them. So I'm sorry that I can't. But those are some great places to start. All right, so my hope is that you can now see conflict resolution as growth opportunities. Thank you for joining me. You've got this.